Welcome to the Searchlight Sessions. I am your host, Maggie McClure, and today I'm so excited to have special guest Chad Whitehead, who is a talent buyer and co-owner of the Tower Theater. He also owns Beer City Music Hall and Pony Boy Bar in Oklahoma City. And like so many others in this time of COVID, Chad has had to adjust how he does business to survive and thrive. And he's here today to share some of his ideas and experiences with us. Thank you so much, Chad, for being here today.
Thanks, Maggie. It's really good to be here. I love talking about this industry that we're both in. We wouldn't be in this industry if we didn't care a whole lot. And I think that's one of the unifiers of this business is everyone who's in it really cares. They really care a lot because it's hard. We wouldn't do it if it was this hard, if we didn't care a lot, you know?
Exactly. Most definitely. I'd like to start today by learning about your background and how you got into the music business and how you got to where you are today.
Well, it's a bit of a dark secret, if I'm being honest. I've been promoting shows since college. So picture the late 90s in Salt Lake City, Utah, lots of ska, lots of punk. Lots of indie in the 2000s as that came in. That was really where I fell in love with music, and particularly live performance. And I had several versions of that all throughout. There was always just a continual thread that on the side, I would be putting on shows of various shapes and sizes. But I was actually a minister for almost 15 years. And so this was always just something that I sort of did on the side of that. And it was nice because there wasn't the pressure. It wasn't my livelihood. So I could just do shows that I wanted to do that I thought were interesting, that were going to be compelling for whatever reason. And that is really where I learned just enough to be dangerous. But especially within the church side of things, I was able to kind of work my way up into like arena rock show. And I wasn't producing and promoting the entire thing, and I don't want to pretend or make it sound like it was, but I got to see the guts of live performance from all the way up from like small stuff at garage shows to those bigger arena shows. And I've always just had a real passion for concerts. I love what artists do. And I love that connection between the fans and the artists. And it's a sacred thing, in my opinion. And so when Tower kind of came around in 2017, it was not something I was looking for. It was something that I was passionate about because I live in the neighborhood directly behind Tower Theater. And there was a lot of excitement for it. And then it just kind of stalled out and it languished for almost a full year. And so me and Steven Tyler, my business partner, were just so frustrated with that because we knew somebody could do this and it could be, in theory, in the wildest of dreams, it could be us. And so we just kept bugging the owners of the property until they finally let us pitch like Shark Tank style. Here's what we would do. And they really liked that. We really led with hospitality. And I think that was the unifying theme that brought that company together, that formed Tower Theater and started bringing concerts to town. So that's a pretty quick version, but yeah, think of me in college promoting a 5 Iron Frenzy concert at the Student Union at the University of Utah, running around stressed out about probably nothing. And that's how I got started in this.
Wow, that's really cool. I didn't know a lot of that, and that's really interesting to know. That's awesome. Very cool. So I know that COVID has had such an impact on all of us in the business and in different ways. Obviously, with venues, it's just obvious people haven't been able to play shows at venues in a traditional sense for the past, 9 months? It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's really since the second week of March.
Yeah. How have you guys shifted to deal with all of the new challenges that this pandemic has brought? And I want to make sure we talk about live streaming. And I think you guys have done some shows there at the Tower Theater that have been live streamed. Did you also go back to some small capacity, limited capacity shows? Tell us about this year.
Yeah, so I'll kind of take it in several chunks. There's March to September, which we weren't doing really anything as far as concerts go. And then September through November, we did some socially distanced shows, some that had live streams included or kind of mixed in there. And then everything since December on, we've kind of gone dark again right now, and we're just kind of hunkered down and watching for better COVID numbers in Oklahoma City predominantly. And then we'll see if we can find some things to do in 2021 until full touring comes back. But if I were to go back to March, the speed with which this tore through the music business was really stunning. And to go very quickly from, hey, this might be serious, they just canceled South by, to less than 2 weeks later, we were having to let people go. You can't keep people on staff that only work the show, because if there's no show, there's no work. And so it got really painful really, really fast. And since then, it's just been a scramble to try to stay one step ahead, try to stay in good relationship with the landlord, with the bank, with our debtors, try to find those graces where we can, find those extensions where we can, find those relief programs and grants and low interest loans where we can. And it's kind of like a game of whack-a-mole, but a very personal, very painful one, because you're fighting to keep the thing alive that you, along with all the other staff, have just absolutely poured your guts into. And so it's been painful. Additionally, it's really painful as a white, middle-aged, middle-class dad like me to have to watch the national politics and have the outcome be so closely tied to my personal success or devastation. And I guess what I mean by that is, because of my class and my skin color in this country, I don't think I've ever had to watch those politics shake out in a way that really affects me. I stay really involved in politics, and I may not like how this happens, or I like that this happens, but it never really like trickles down to me as an individual, as a white middle class guy. And so that's been really hard, and it's given me a lot of grace for people in other socioeconomic brackets or people with minorities or different skin color to be so tied to federal legislation is no way to live. It is exhausting. So I'm very relieved that, Save Our Stages was included in this last package of relief. And I guess I should have probably said that first before I talked about all that. But that's been really hard, because it's not just a stack of paper or a headline. You're looking at the staff that you have remaining. You're looking at 2021, and it's just it's been pretty rough, if I'm being real honest. So the flip side to that, though, is that people have been so supportive, so understanding, so gracious. Ticket holders have not eaten us alive when shows get rescheduled. Bands have been so considerate and thoughtful. Agents, managers, everything about the business has gotten kinder right now as a result. And so there's some cool things that happen from all of this, but man, we really feel the love from the community, and that's been a huge encouragement to us in the middle of all this. Now, you asked about streaming.
Yeah.
Let's dial in on that a little bit more. We've done some live stream, directly to live stream with no audience in the room. And we've done 2 seasons of what we call live stream from Pony Boy. And that's just the band's playing live, but they're playing to cameras and it's going straight out onto the internet. We've also, and you guys did one of those, stream from your house directly to the fans. So we've done several like that. We've done one hybrid where it was an in-person show at Tower Theater and it was streamed live at the same time. And that one was pretty exciting, just because that was the first time we've done that. And for me, I think there's a new model that could work out in the next few years where if artists can find a way to properly kind of protect that geography, and all, you have to make sure your songwriting gets protected, and the people that do all that have to figure out the licensing on all that. And I'm not gonna can't speak to that, but I, as a venue person, would love it if you could offer people the option to watch a show in person, or maybe it's a Tuesday night show and you've got 3 kids now and you can't really be out till 12:30, but you'd sure love to put the kids to bed and just watch the show for a couple hours. I think that's such a viable opportunity. So I really hope that we can figure that out as an industry, because I think it'll help us come back.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be awesome. Obviously this time has been so hard for so many people. And it also has presented some opportunities. So like with your hybrid live stream and limited capacity show, now that you've done that and seen how successful it can be, it's really cool to think that could be the new norm, like what you're talking about. I think that would be a great idea. And I would love to be a part of shows, playing at venues who are doing that. And I think even though this has been such a rough time, hopefully that the concept of doing a live stream from a venue now hopefully is in place at a lot of these venues throughout the country. So I think that's a great thing that's come from this, and I hope that continues. That's awesome. You guys have been able to do it and do it so well. Can you talk a little bit more about what the most recent passing with the Save Our Stages, what does that actually mean for venues right now?
Okay, one last thought on that streaming ticket. Every venue is going to be ADA compliant. I mean, it just has to be. But there's a lot of ableism that's baked into a live concert, and it's hard. If you have any kind of physical limitation or struggle or anything that just makes being in a crowd untenable, this is a game changer. And it's an opportunity for people to connect with something that they're passionate about. And so I think there's a lot of good business reasons why this can happen, and I hope it does. But I just think for society, there's a real opportunity here to do this, to do this right and do it better. So I would put that out to that community, that I'd love for this to be an ongoing dialogue about what that needs to have baked in to make that really be successful. And I think the industry is going to find out really quick how this goes and goes well. And people more clever than I are going to really dial this thing in, and I'm just going to pay attention to how they do it. But the technology is there. The venues have the technology. I mean, Tower, we've got such a talented team, and so many venues really have that kind of talent just there because they love music. And so it's just a matter of the industry figuring out how to do it in a way that is honorable to the musicians. And so I can't help with that part, but I'm excited. I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
Now, to Save Our Stages, assuming it gets signed and all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted and everything, which it looks like it will, but the package is a $15 billion set aside for live music venues. It includes some other types of public gathering things like movie theaters and such, but what it means practically is it's a lifeline. It buys us time so that we can hopefully be around when full business returns. And so it's huge. I have a lot of questions about it still because the money could run out really quick. There's a lot of venues that have been really hurting. And so I want to be optimistic that it's going to work out for every venue. But it's going to buy us runway. and hopefully enough runway that by the time things come back, we'll still be here. So that's really what it is.
Yeah. Well, that's really encouraging to know that that looks like it's moving in the right direction. So that's awesome news. Um, Back to live stream for a second. What do you think has been the most successful form of a live stream that you've done? I mean, obviously at your theater, you guys have state-of-the-art cameras, video capability, obviously audio, and you've done the live streams from Pony Boy as well, and then of course the streams from musicians' homes, like what we did. What seems to have been the most successful and the most engaging? What would you say?
It's a really good question. I think the challenge is always to deliver authenticity from a live stream. And that can look different depending on the artist and the genre. I think there's an opportunity to do a live stream that doesn't just try to recreate everything that a live concert would be, but it could rather acknowledge the fact that it's not a live concert, but it's still live music, and it could have a lot of different pieces. There's such an opportunity to have a little bit of an interview baked in. There's an opportunity to see where an artist records their music, like in the studio or in their backyard, or sitting beside the fire, and so there's ways to add value to that live stream. I'm going to be really curious to see when the live concert comes back with the digital stream. There's so many opportunities to start the stream with the artist in the green room, or maybe to follow the artist backstage, to see some of the guts of how a concert is put on. Even just being able to log in and watch a little bit of sound check, or to see what load. There's just a lot of, if you find the right fan that really finds the band that they love, there's an opportunity to surround the live show with a lot of other cool pieces. And so I think somebody's going to figure out what those ingredients are and really nail that. And I'm really excited to see that. But I think it's sort of like watching artists perform live on TV. There's a lot of technical things that have to happen for that recorded experience to sound great later when you're watching on TV. Those realities are still very much true with live streaming. And so it's like, if your band is garage rock and you don't care if you're in key or not when you're singing because it's garage rock, I love that. You go own that, and I will sing along at that show, and that's my jam right there. But delivering that to a live stream is it's pretty difficult to pull that off. And so I think it comes to just a band really knowing themselves and knowing what they can deliver on well, because it's got to be at the level of professionalism that the artist does everything else. And then it's got to be authentic to them. That's my 2 cents on live stream so far.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. Well, let's jump to your video series, Scene Skeleton. Now, you guys have done 8 episodes so far. Is that correct?
That's correct. We did 8 episodes for season 1. I really love the idea of doing another season next year, but I need some time to really think about that. There's some things I want to adjust, and then would need to go raise a little bit of fundraising as well. But yeah, it was a real blast to do that.
Can you tell everyone what exactly it is?
Yeah, so it started out of this panic that I had late summer, that I was getting so rusty. My music muscles were so out of shape that I needed something to sort of just stay connected to the music space and stay connected with artists and musicians. And so I just kind of put it out on Twitter that if any bands wanted to just talk, that I was going to do 8 kind of Zoom sessions, not to puff myself up, but really just to hey, let's wrestle with whatever you're trying to figure out. And if I can add any things to consider to that, I'm more than happy to. And And that process was really fun. I did it all like back to back. So it was kind of my brain was absolutely fried, but it was really engaging. And from that, my wife, Chelsea, and I really just kicked up this idea of sharing with perhaps a wider audience what those conversations were about. And so really starting to think about what are the conversations that artists would like to have. And since this industry right now is pretty much at a standstill, and everyone's relating and talking to each other and sharing information in a way that has not really happened in my experience before. But just to share that and to leverage where I'm at in this business with other artists that don't have access to agents and managers and artists and things like that. And so it's really just a love letter for musicians and bands. I love bands, and my favorite memories are back in Salt Lake when bands would just crash at my house. I had a basement apartment separate from our house that just had bunk beds in it and a shower and a kitchen. And bands could just hit it up and crash. And Salt Lake's just right in the middle. Everywhere you're going to tour, you're going to have to go spend the night in Salt Lake. It's just, there's not much out in the West. It's pretty wide open. And so it would just get out that bands knew they could crash. And it was pretty normal a couple times a week to have different bands crashing there. And I just love the passion that artists have to have when they're starting to tour, and they're in vans and trailers is where I like to spend my time with musicians. And there's just a raw passion for what they're doing that I find so compelling. The bravery it takes to put yourself up on the stage, and the bravery it takes to head out of town and not know what's waiting for you where you get there is it's incredibly brave. And so I just love trying to be a friendly face in the middle of that journey.
That's so cool. Thank you for doing that and being an amazing resource for musicians. That really means a lot to me as a musician. So thank you for offering your advice and your availability to help, maybe give some guidance and ideas to some artists and bands and musicians. I think that's really, really awesome. And if you guys haven't seen the video series, definitely check that out. Is it sceneskeleton.com, Chad?
Yeah, all 8 episodes are posted there at sceneskeleton.com. It's all free. All you got to do is just go watch them, and they're kind of by topic, so you can find something that's relevant to you. I will say that I found it interesting that there were some real common threads throughout the series, not just specific to one episode, but there were things that came up almost every single week. So I was surprised by that.
Wow. Very cool. Some of the topics you guys talked about that I think we'd like to talk about a little bit today. What are some ways that you've seen from your perspective are the best ways for artists and bands to promote their gigs?
Oh, that's like the classic question. I think the best work a band can do is to try to find a variety of ways to say the same thing over and over, and find a variety of places to say the same thing over and over. And so it's all the basics that everybody already knows. But then I think there's a lot of tweaks, and I see a lot of bands that just want to, hey, I'm just going to post on Twitter 20 times about this one event, and bam, 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 bam. And that's all I'm going to talk about. And I think that sometimes gets a little flat. And so it's like, yeah, how do you talk about the show? But maybe, hey, here's a video from practice. We're getting ready for our show. Like, there's got to be ways to like kind of turn the perspective just to keep it interesting. But I see a lot of bands that just blow right past some basics that would be super helpful. And it's like, have an email list, put it out your show, grab emails from people, especially as you start traveling into other cities. You have to catalog all of that data, and you have to be letting those people know when you're coming to town and that you've got this coming up or this coming out. And it's not sexy to talk about email connections with your fan base, but it's like super, super important. And I think nobody thinks I'm big enough to start doing that. That's why you just got to start it. You just got to like start to build that.
Yeah.
I think there's so many opportunities in cross promoting that I would love to see bands get better at, of like, hey, we're not talking about our show today. We're going to talk about this other band's show. And here's why we're excited for this show. And then a band that actually like pumped up another artist show and then actually showed up at it would be so cool. I think the scene in Oklahoma City to me feels kind of fragmented, and everyone just shows up and plays there 45 minutes and then just is gone. And I love the idea of cross promoting and just talking about other people's music and other people's shows. And I think especially in Oklahoma, people love seeing stuff like that. It goes a long way, and so there's a lot of opportunity there. I don't see a lot of bands doing it. So I guess I don't know that it would work, but I've seen it from the venue level. We have great cross promotional relationships where we have said the same thing for months, but all of a sudden we get someone else to say it and it's just like received totally differently,
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know what.
Sorry, I was going to just interject. After living in LA for 6 years, Shane and I would go to shows almost every night, and we kind of, we got tired from going. There were so many opportunities to see so many great bands any night of the week. And I think that is a really important part of being a musician, is going to other people's shows and supporting other people. And I do think that it is a little fragmented here in Oklahoma City, but I love to see artists at other artist shows, and we love to go support other artists. I think the last live show that we went to was at the Tower Theater in the end of January, Casey Clifford's CD release show. And I just think it's really important to support other people and celebrate other people's accomplishments, especially because coming from another musician, you know exactly what that means and how important that is. And it's good to celebrate each other and not see each other as competitors, but more like brothers and sisters. We're all in this together, and someone's accomplishment is like everyone's accomplishment.
Yeah, and I think, if you sort of have to choose and figure out who your people are, but once you know who those people are, like, I mean, obviously that's who you want to put on the bill and share the stage with and be around, because, people enjoy being around each other. So why wouldn't you enjoy playing music together? But it's like, once you sort of build up that group of people, keep promoting them, keep talking about them, keep hyping them. You could even trade it. Be like, hey, you help me hype this, I'll help you hype that. But it just keeps everything a little bit more fresh. And I think social media especially is just like this cauldron of stale. And sometimes it can get pretty flat. And we struggle with that from the venue side of just like, we can't just post the show's announcing and like leave it alone. Like that can't just be all our social channels are. It gets pretty boring. So just trying to be relevant and use those new tools and connect with fans, and don't assume your fans know everything. People are slow to pick up on messaging. So you do have to say stuff a lot over and over, but find that fresh way to do it. Would be my 2 cents on that.
Very cool. Yeah, I definitely agree. Email lists are huge. We've been collecting emails for over a decade, and it's amazing how many people are on our email blasts that aren't following us on social media, and vice versa. So it's really important to keep all of those mediums in check and utilize them all. There's a service that we use called Textiful, where you can actually, you probably heard of it, but you can create a phone number, and actually from stage, you can tell your fans, join our email list from your phone. Let's get our phones out. Okay, text the word blah, blah, blah to the number blah, 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 and it signs you up. That's something new that we've had for a few years, and that's been huge too. Now, especially with COVID, some people aren't going to want to touch the actual sign-in sheet. So that's a contactless way to do it as well. So very important. Email lists, email addresses are really, really important for musicians and artists. So I'm glad that you talked about that. And cross promoting is huge. We've done that with other artists, and it really has made a difference. Like you're saying, it helps kind of mix things up, and it does get old seeing someone constantly talking about the same thing all the time. And so it's nice to have a fresh perspective and talk about something else and have another band talk about your show. And I have done a swap like what you're talking about, promoting another artist and then asking them, hey, can you promote this at this time? And what would be best for you, for me to promote for you? And I have found that to be very helpful. So thank you for bringing that up.
I think there's a lot of stuff that bands start doing when they are signed to an agency, and the agency has a tour coordinator, and the tour coordinator just starts like, hey, we want to do this, we want to do this, we want to do this. But all those strategies are great for like local bands and developing bands. Like if you've booked a gig, ask that venue if you can do an Instagram takeover. And that's your chance to build some connection with their audience before the show, which is going to hopefully help get some more people at the show. That's obviously a goal. But if they already sort of like you before they get there, then maybe they're actually listening and you're the opening band and they got there on time and they're paying attention, or maybe they're going to end up buying some merch. And so it's like just looking for those opportunities and just asking. It doesn't cost you to ask, and it doesn't cost you to do it, as long as you have the time to be creative and thoughtful. And I just think there's a lot of things that bands do once they start getting at that certain level, that start practicing them now so that you're comfortable with that. There's a lot of just logistical know-how things about presenting yourself in this new age that have nothing to do with making music, but they are a reality that we all have to be savvy. Like we all now have to have a Zoom setup with selfie lighting and all that stuff. So it's like, we all have to be responsible for this discourse and know the tools to it. And that's entry level stuff right now that we all just have to adapt to.
Yeah. Well, another topic that you guys have talked about on Scene Skeleton is album releases and single releases. Now, that is a topic on its own outside of a pandemic. Let's talk about that during a pandemic and post-pandemic. What is your view on that?
Well, I have to start by saying that of all those Zoom sessions I did back in August, every band wanted to know what I thought about album release stuff. And I have to start by saying, I've never released anything. I'm not in a band. I've never been in a band. So this is the area that I have the least amount of learned experience that I can try to share. So I'm regurgitating. And I've heard some artists say, you know what, you might as well go ahead and release your music. And there's no more waiting on it, because this is not just a 2-month kind of blip, you know? I've also had artists say, you know what, I put some stuff out and people just weren't open to it. They're just not in a place where they could ingest new music. And I totally vibe with that. I've had long stretches of this where I've just gone back to old albums that are more soothing to me because I'm familiar with them. And the idea of new stuff, new movies, new anything just doesn't sound comforting. So I understand both sides really, really well. I think, again, it just comes down to the artist knowing themselves and being authentic to that, and then having a really strong team. And I know most artists don't have the luxury of like having an awesome manager or an agent or things like that, or a whole team of people or a PR, a publicist and stuff like that. If you have those people, you need to lean into what they're saying and as a team really, look at all the angles and make sure you make a good decision there. But if you don't have that team in place, you can still go searching. You can still ask. And I think right now is a great time to ask other artists if you have access to them. If you have a contact point where you can get a hold of them, it's a great time to just ask artists, because man, I have no idea what it's like out there. All that to say, this is long enough now that I think at some point the people are just going to have to release what they've got and be okay with the fact that it's probably never going to sell what it needed to or what it could have, and deal with the heartbreak of what that is. Because it doesn't sound very fun to sort of sit on something that you've created for like 2 years and just wait around to give it to the world. I think that on its own sounds kind of cruel. You know, if you've worked really hard to deliver something that you're super proud of and it's like your baby, putting it on the shelf for a year because of strategy, that's pretty insulting. And I can't imagine that would feel very good. But again, I'm not an artist, so I'm guessing at this. What do you guys think, Maggie?
Yeah.
You're an artist. You have had lots of recorded music that you've had to reschedule or think about. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. Well, thank you for your thoughts on that. And yes, so the Imaginaries, we recorded our debut album in Muscle Shoals, Alabama in the fall of 2018. And then we finished it in the summer of 2019. So we were planning on possibly a fall 2019 release, and then Shane, my husband, had an emergency appendectomy, and that unfortunately set him back for about 6 months. He was recovering from that, and we just knew as soon as that had happened that obviously the timing wasn't right to release the album because of his health, obviously. So during that time, he encouraged me to not be discouraged and to actually focus on what I could be working on at that time, which he thought by the holiday season he would be feeling up to touring. And so he encouraged me to try to book us on an opening slot for a touring artist for a Christmas tour. And so I had not really gone about this as aggressively as I did this time before. Maybe I'd sent a couple emails out in the past, but never really focused hard on this in particular before. And so what I did is I found touring acts that would be going out on the road during the holidays. And mind you, this was in July, so it was kind of hard to find people who would be releasing holiday albums that early and also going on tour. So I had to do a lot of research, and I found a list of about 20 bands, everyone, from Martina McBride to the Pentatonics, to the Brian Setzer Orchestra. And I made a list and I put them in order of the ones that I thought would be the best fit. And I started researching the management for each of those bands. And then,
which is hard to do because a lot of that is not very available. You think I'll just Google it and you run out of hits real quick in this industry.
Yes, it is not easy to find a manager's email for bands of this caliber. And so that was a challenge in itself, but I was able to find most of them through a lot of research. And I emailed them and asked about their upcoming tour and if they had an opening slot. And to my surprise, most every single one of them wrote me back, which something to know is a lot of the time you just don't hear back from people, especially if they're not interested. They're not going to take the time usually to respond. Well, most of these people did, and they were very kind, and they said, we love what you guys are doing. We love your holiday show. Unfortunately, we're not having support for this, but thanks so much for reaching out. And then we got 3 really promising responses of, we'll keep you in mind. And one of those was Brian Setzer's manager. And so we just said, okay, that's great, and went about life, getting ready for the album to come out whenever it may, and just getting everything ready for that. And October 1st of last year, we got a call and got offered to open for the entire Brian Setzer Orchestra tour, which was amazing. And
those are big rooms. That's a big tour.
Yes, we were so excited. we've worked so hard for so long, and an opportunity like this is obviously very hard to get. And so we were very excited. And so we knew we had to get the album ready to go. And our publicist also said, "You have a new Christmas song, right?" We were like, "No, not yet, but we will tomorrow." And we wrote a new Christmas song and decided to repackage all of our past holiday releases under one album. That would be easier for people to purchase at the shows. And we ordered a ton of merchandise because they told us that that crowd buys a ton of merch. So, needless to say, 2 days before the tour, we're all ready to go. Rented a Sprinter van, hired a tour manager, the whole thing. And the tour got canceled, and we were just heartbroken. And so from that, our plan was to put the album out right after that release, like on the heels of that tour. And unfortunately, that fell through. And so it also set us back financially. So we didn't get to release the album then. And we thought, okay, well, this was a huge hit. Let's look at a spring or summer 2020. And then COVID happened. And we were just like, okay, we have to do something. So we decided, let's at least release a couple singles with really great music videos, just to keep the momentum going and building, and also hype people up, reminding them that more is coming, that album is coming. And it has been just so challenging because it's hard to figure out when to release music anyway, much less during a pandemic. So I think our plan at the moment is we're just going to go ahead and move forward with releasing it in early 2021 and just make the most of it and have that team in place and do everything that we can to make it as successful as possible, knowing that by putting it out there, by the time touring does come back, hopefully people will see what we have and what we can do, and those opportunities might be a little more accessible with having the album out already. So yeah, but there's no easy answer to that. It's really hard, but everything that you said and my 2 cents, I think, will definitely be helpful to those watching.
Well, we're definitely at a point now where it doesn't feel like there's any good answer. And so at this point, it's like, just expect that whatever decision you make, part of it's going to break your heart. There's just there's no clean path at this point. I wish there was, but most artists really need the album cycle to sync up with the tour and keep the whole thing, on schedule. And it's been very disruptive.
Well, and knowing that a lot of people are waiting until the fall to put music out, it's going to be crazy because everyone's going to be wanting to tour and release music all at the same time, where usually it's pretty spaced out throughout the year. So that's another thing to consider, and another reason why we decided we're not going to wait to be in that same pool of people. We'd like to get it out ahead of time. So yeah, but you're right. There's no right or wrong answer. Well, let's talk a little bit about when things do go back. What should artists, musicians be doing now, and what should we be expecting to change when we go back? Obviously, safety is a valid concern. What are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, I think most artists, if they were sitting here and I was just talking to them, I would say, don't try to figure out what this is going to look like during COVID. Put your energy on looking at what it's going to look like after. And there is not much to be gained from these very small, pocketed, seated, socially distanced, whatever kind of shows. So I would not, based on my experience at this point, say that it's worth putting a ton of effort into that, because we do know that the end is coming on this thing and we are climbing our way out of this. And, someone I know got the vaccine this last week, and it was so moving for me. It was emotional just to know someone that's got it now. That is a reminder that we are climbing our way out of this thing, and it's a long ways off still, but the end is coming. And so I wouldn't put a lot of work into what a COVID show looks like. If you can find some cool outdoor opportunities this summer, I think that's where some good effort could be spent in trying to get on some of the modified outdoor. They're not festivals. We need to lower our expectations on production value, but some of those outdoor kind of pop-up type things, I think there's a great opportunity there. But it does feel like most everything is kind of looking at the fall. But I think even that is really a hope. And really, I'm sort of expecting 2021 to be another lean year on the live touring front. However, I think it's a great time for artists to do some of the unfun stuff of being in a band. Make sure your website is current and up to date and fits the brand of your music and who you are. Make sure your electronic press kit is actually like exists and available and quickly accessed. I think I shared this on one of my Scene Skeleton Instagram posts, but music videos are awesome, but they're for the fan. So find an EPK or as you work on your EPK, include some live concert footage, because that's what a buyer really wants to see. They don't want to see your music video. That's cool. I mean, they want to see that that's good, that the fans like it, but I want to see what it's like live, because that's where my head's at. And so just like thinking through your EPK and making sure that it is really like tightened up and has what club owners need to see and see quickly. Because if you're caught with your pants down after 18 months off and you miss out on an opportunity because you didn't do the boring stuff, like shame on you. Like, this is the time to like get that stuff done. If you need new photos for your band, you got time now. I mean, you got to figure out the money part, but get creative there and work on that. And so I think there are things that artists can be doing right now. They're not very fun. Making sure all your licensing stuff is done properly and distributed where it needs to be. And those aren't things I can coach anyone on. Although that episode of Scene Skeleton definitely has some really good Spotify kind of bits and bobbles there from the guys and husbands. And if you can write music, if you can be creative right now in this space, then man, do it. Write music, create music. That's incredible. You'll never have this much time. Personally, I've found it really hard to be creative in this stretch, and it's been very hard to do anything for an extended amount of time. I don't know that this season bodes well for songwriting, but maybe it does, and I hope it does. And I think it's also good right now to start thinking about, okay, as a band, as an artist, what do I want it to look like coming back? And really being thoughtful about that. If you want to play at these certain places, it's not the right time right now to email those places, but be 6 months ahead of what you think. If you think everything's coming back in the fall, then, March, April, start putting out those feelers and lining up some stuff, because it's going to get really busy really fast. And I do think that once this comes back, it's going to be 18 months of busy. And so a lot of artists that aren't thinking right now that I want to be touring, you may have an opportunity that you're not thinking of just simply because demand is going to be so great. And venues are going to be running more shows. There's going to be more need for support acts, but you can't just play your own town, 3 times a week, but you may find some opportunities for your band that right now don't exist. And so I would get those things kind of in motion and get comfortable with some of those parts of the business. Because it is going to come back.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you for all of those tidbits of advice. What do you have to say about booking agents? Do you think that bands should this is probably not a good time to try to get a booking agent? When should an artist try to get a booking agent? I mean, I've seen that a lot of agents are getting laid off from the larger companies. So what's your take on that?
Yeah. So the agencies have had to lay off so many great agents, and that's been really hard to watch. Um, the artists are staying with their agents, and so the agents are still in the game. They just have new email addresses now, and those really big conglomerates, those really big agencies have really kind of been replaced by a lot of much smaller boutique agencies, which I think is going to be good for the industry. I think it's going to allow those agents who are super talented to really like flex. Whereas in those big corporate offices and corporate structures, you know, you were just kind of a cog in a very big machine. And so I'm really excited. I think it's going to lead to better deals for artists and better relationships for artists. They may not have all the bells and whistles of like a tour department that's just helping, you know, hit numbers and stuff on the road, but I'm excited for where all that goes. When does a band need a booking agent? I don't think a booking agent is going to even look at an artist until they see they are selling out rooms in their hometown. And I don't mean I played at a bar that had a $3 cover and there were 1,000 people in the room. That probably was a hell of a fun night, but you didn't sell 1,000 tickets. You played in front of 1,000 people, which is important. And that is a like, own that, because that's a real accomplishment and an achievement. But a booking agent is going to want to see a band that's like selling out of whatever the room is. If it's a 50 cap, they sold it out. If there's a 100 cap, they sold it out. If there's 200 cap, they sold it out. And when booking agents start seeing sellouts in hometowns, that's when they start looking, because it just means this is a band that people are paying attention to and enjoying. Let's see if we can replicate that success in other markets. And you're paying an agent to help maximize your potential during that curve of, you know, marketability and economic possibility. And so you have to be on that bell curve before an agent can really justify the time, because they're going to put in 18 months, 2 years of time where they're getting 10% of nothing while they try to help you grow and build it up. And they're going to want to see a band that's really got some potential. And our agents are so overworked. You know, it's really hard to respond to 120 emails a day, 5 or 6 days a week. And it turns into being easy to those. I'm just not going to reply because I'm not interested. And I just don't have the heart to like stare at this for 12 minutes to try to make it sound nicer. Then I just know it's going to be a bad news answer no matter what, you know? And so they're really overworked. So to get their attention, you gotta show the numbers. Mm-hmm. That's what I think. You gotta show the numbers, and then you can start that conversation. Now, in the meantime, it doesn't hurt to have somebody that's helping you book some things, you know, and do some stuff like that. But a booking agent doesn't have the time or the space on their roster for an artist that's not ready to go hit, you know, 100, 150 dates a year. They might want to just, hey, this artist only does this every year. They might do that. But it's really got to fit into their work schedule and their roster. And there's so much that people don't think about when they think about agents. We just think about, oh, they just take a cut. But man, they're doing some really important work on behalf of the industry, and they don't get the credit they deserve. They just get the caricature, which is really unfair.
Yeah, I mean, booking is so important and takes so much time, and the entire cycle of booking a show. And from my perspective, you know, having worked so hard to book that Brian Setzer tour, and then also leading into this year, I had booked us about 40 like local regional shows. And because we were looking to release the album, it made sense to do all these dates. And all of them got canceled, and I spent so much time, making each one happen, and that was so hard. And so, I mean, I know how much work goes into booking a tour and booking shows, and grateful for the hard work that agents do. For people just starting out, and even mid-level artists, I mean, the way to go is just book your stuff yourself. It's a lot of hard work, and it's totally possible. Um, like you're talking about outdoor events, one thing that we've really tapped into is working with different cities. So a lot of cities have budgets for concerts in the park or something like that. And they don't know where to start on booking talent a lot of the time because this isn't their area of expertise. Something that we found is if we reach out to a city that we know they're having a specific event and present our EPK, our links to live performances and all the things that you're talking about, a lot of the time they're like, yes, please. And it's a win-win for everyone. So I would encourage bands and artists to think outside the box, and look at different cities that they might be able to collaborate with this summer and fall on some outdoor events.
Yeah, if you've found success, look for ways to replicate it. You know, if it's moving to another town, awesome. But take it all with you. Like, make sure you get that live clip. Make sure you get those quotes from those city folks, like after the event. Make sure you write them a thank you card, and you do all those. Like, those are all really key pieces because they're going to help you replicate that success. And then you also might get to become an annual thing. And that is really valuable when you know that a city or somebody with a budget just really likes your band. Because they're going to want to bring you back if they enjoy you and the fans enjoy you and you're good to work with. And that really, as I kind of teased it early in the show, but the number one thing that I really caught from doing all 8 episodes of Scene Skeleton is just the quality of relationship and communication that you have wherever you're at in the musical industry and the journey and everything. It's like, it all comes back to, are you a decent person? Did you try to be a decent person? It's like, that is the glue that holds this whole thing together.
Right.
But it's important, if you had a great outing at a brewery and a brewery was like, man, having you guys play was awesome and it helped our sales, then man, holler at every brewery on the list and tell them, hey, we did this at this place and it went like this. And you got to look for your opportunities. That is one thing too, as venues all come back and we get really busy. I think because we haven't had any kind of social public events, because of that, there's an opportunity. Everybody's going to want to be booking bands after this thing. And so get your setup ready to play to do bursing and play on the side of the street, or to just play on whatever made up stage. There's going to be a lot of people paying musicians to do stuff public, like live performance, very, very soon. And so look for those opportunities as well. I think they're going to be there for sure.
That's awesome. Very encouraging. Just one more thing before we sign off today. You host a weekly radio show on KOSU and the SPY FM, correct?
Yeah.
Would you tell us about that? And also, how would an artist go about getting their music on a radio show like yours?
I host a weekly show called About What You'd Expect on Saturday nights at 9 p.m. on KOSU and the SPY. It's super fun. It's really just a discipline to keep myself listening to new music and to give back. It's a it's a labor of love. You don't get paid, and it does take a couple hours a week of your time to sort of thoughtfully try to put it all together. But I love it. I love finding new music. I always have. I always like to just be on that front end of stuff that's coming. If artists are interested in having their music considered for that show, I will just say this: the box I've sort of made myself to play in is mostly indie and mostly modern, like as it's coming out right now. And so I will push those lines every once in a while, but for the most part, that's kind of what I do on that show. And Micah Young is my co-host. She's joined me this year to sort of bring in a different perspective, which I'm really, by invitation. I thought it'd just be more fun to have a bit of a musical conversation, and it has absolutely been that. It's been a riot so far. But just hit me up. I think probably social media is probably the easiest way. Right now, I check email religiously because of my job, but at least for the next little bit, that's going to be pretty quiet on the email. So 405 chat on social media, send it my way. I'll always listen. I always try to put everything down and really listen when an artist sends me music, because again, I just think the process of creating something and sharing it is so vulnerable and so sacred, and I really try to respect that, even if it's not something that I personally end up loving. But yeah, hit me up. Always hit me up. I like when people book or email me about booking as well. It's available. If you can find it all online. I'm not hard to find online. You can email me. Don't Facebook message me. I guess I should say that. Reach out on social, but not Facebook, because that'll be there for months before I see it. So yeah, but just I'm around, and I like engaging with artists as much as I can within reason. Try to be supportive, certainly. And if I don't have the right stage or the right radio show, I at least like knowing who's out there and what they're trying to cultivate. And I always like to keep stuff like that in the back of my head to find opportunities down the road. And you never know where life's going to take you.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for being so accessible. And I really appreciate your time today. And I really hope that the next few months and the next year really turns around for all venues, including the Tower Theater. And thank you guys for all you do as a venue, and you yourself, to support live music, independent music, Oklahoma music. You guys are doing an awesome job, and highly respected in the community and all around the country. So keep it up. And I know things will turn around for all of us, and just really appreciate you being here today. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we sign off?
I'll just thank you for the conversation. It was really fun, and I enjoy stuff like this. I just wish I could go to sleep and wake up in 9 months and have us all be back through this. I kind of, it's like that magical thinking of a kid where you just wish you could wake up and we'd be 9 months in the future. I'm so eager to get back to it. I was actually going through concert posters today at Tower, just kind of reminiscing. Kind of like you when you book stuff for yourself, you know how much work went into it, and then to cancel an entire year's worth of scheduled concerts and things that weren't even announced yet that I was so excited about. It's just so hard to say goodbye to all those, and so I was actually reminiscing today, but we will get back to it, and I am hoping for a industry that is so much more holistically connected that we can cut out a lot of the BS that the industry has sort of held on to for the last 30, 40 years. I just want to streamline it all. I want conversations between managers and bands and agents and venues to just be more open, more forthright, simpler, where shared goals are introduced and agreed upon, and then we all just go about the business of achieving those goals. And that's sort of the new school in the industry anyway. So that was already happening. I just want to get to it. I'm really excited for that. I can't wait to get annoyed by somebody talking at a concert, because what a nice problem to have. I would just love that.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I love everything you said. Thank you so much for being here today on the Searchlight Sessions. Again, this video series is designed to help up-and-comers in the entertainment business to expand ways that they can be successful. Stay tuned for some takeaway ideas from this session to help with your success. Thank you, Chad. We really appreciate you.
Thanks, Maggie.
Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.